An old woman says to a billionaire CEO, "Hey son, your laugh hasn't changed." Snowflakes clung to the air like fragile secrets, refusing to fall. Lanterns glowed along the narrow lanes of the Christmas market, spilling warm amber light across cobblestones slick with frost. Music drifted from a brass quartet, thin, wavering notes of silent night, competing with the chatter of bundled shoppers and the sizzling scent of roasted chestnuts. Among the crowd moved a man whose presence bent space without effort. Tall, sharp in a cashmere coat worth more than most of the vendor stalls combined, his gait was brisk, precise. He barely glanced at the carolers or the twinkling lights. Such pageantry was for others. His mind, as always, ticked with the machinery of deadlines, acquisitions, and quarterly margins. This was Adrian Mercer, CEO of Novus Industries, darling of Wall Street, and a man whose face graced the covers of magazines that praised him as visionary, ruthless, untouchable. His phone vibrated in his gloved hand. Another negotiation waiting. He ignored it. For once, he had promised himself to walk through the market. Alone, anonymous, unreachable. At the center square a crowd had gathered. A street performer in a red cap balanced 3 flaming torches, wobbling comically before juggling them into the night sky. Children squealed. Parents clapped. Adrian slowed despite himself. The juggler stumbled, pretended to drop, then flicked a torch through his legs, catching it behind his back. The crowd burst into laughter. And then it happened. Adrian laughed. Not the polite, careful chuckle he reserved for boardrooms or investors. Not the sly smirk sharpened for interviews. This was different, unguarded, ringing, almost boyish. It rose from him before he could stop it, echoing off the shop fronts, startling even himself with its clarity. From a bench nearby, an old woman turned her head so quickly her scarf slipped from her shoulder. Her eyes, clouded but piercing, locked onto him. The air between them seemed to still. She stood, her cane tapping on the stone, and moved toward him with surprising urgency. Shoppers parted instinctively, sensing something private was about to unfold. "Hey son," she said softly, her voice trembling but steady, "your laugh hasn't changed." Adrian blinked, taken off guard. "Excuse me." The woman in Sep's lips quivered, her gloved hand pressed against her mouth as though she had spoken too much, but her eyes stayed fixed on him. "That laugh," she whispered. "I haven't heard it in 40 years. A hush pressed around them, though the crowd still clapped for the juggler. Adrian felt the weight of her gaze, a strange recognition he couldn't name. He straightened, defensive instinct rising, the same armor he wore against rivals and journalists. I'm sorry. Do I know you?" Her answer came like a secret unwrapped in winter air. "You laughed just like that when you were 1 year old." The world seemed to tilt. For a moment, Adrian's breath faltered, lost between disbelief and something deeper, a tremor he couldn't place. He searched her face, wrinkled, weathered, framed by silver hair escaping her knit hat. She wasn't familiar, and yet, something stirred, a trace beneath the years. He wanted to dismiss her, to step away and bury the encounter beneath his calendar, but his feet wouldn't move. The laughter still rang in his chest, colliding with her words, unsettling something long walled off. A child tugged the woman's coat, urging her back to their bench, but she gently brushed the hand aside. She didn't break her stare. Adrian cleared his throat. "You must be mistaken, I think." But she shook her head firmly. "No mistake. That laugh. It's yours, and I would know it anywhere." Silence stretched. Snow thickened, settling on his shoulders. Around them the market buzzed on, oblivious to the fracture in his night. For the first time in years, Adrian felt like a man without control. Adrian forced a laugh, the kind that was sharp, metallic, and carried none of the warmth that had startled the woman moments ago. "I think you're confusing me with someone else," he said, his tone rehearsed, the way he deflected shareholders' complaints or a journalist probing. But the woman didn't waver. Her hand, brittle with age, hovered near his sleeve, not quite touching. "No," she murmured. "I could never mistake that sound. It's been locked in my chest all these years." Tonight it unlocked itself. The words unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. Locked in her chest. All these years. He stepped back slightly, needing distance. Though the crowd pressed around them, the scent of roasted almonds mixed with snow-dampened wool, he felt cornered. Miss I don't know what you think you know, Adrian said, steady but clipped, but you don't know me. Her eyes softened, sorrow shadowing them. Then tell me, she whispered, do you feel it too, the way sound can carry time? He wanted to scoff, to end this strange play of riddles. Yet her voice tugged something deep inside, something buried under years of transactions and titles. He didn't feel it. Did he? He shoved his hands deeper into his coat pockets. I don't have time for this. Of course you don't, she said gently, almost to herself. You never did. That stung. He didn't know why. He turned as if to leave, but a child Sep's voice cut through the air. A boy, no more than 6, tugged on the old woman Sep's scarf. Grandma. Is this man a friend? The woman bent down, stroking the boy Sep's hair. Maybe, she said softly. An old friend in a new coat. The boy studied Adrian with disarming seriousness, eyes too clear to ignore. You look sad when you laugh, he said. Adrian's throat tightened. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. Children had a way of piercing armor. Adults never breached. He looked away, scanning the crowd, pretending to be distracted by a vendor's bells. The woman straightened slowly, her cane steadying her. Forgive me for startling you, she said, voice quieter now. It's just, I never thought I hear that sound again. Adrian exhaled, frost blooming in the air. Against his instincts, he asked, who are you? She hesitated, fingers twisting the edge of her scarf. The boy pressed against her side. Finally she answered, my name is Eleanor. The name meant nothing to him. No flash of memory, no recognition, just another name in a world of millions. Eleanor, he repeated, testing it like a foreign word. Why would you say something like that to me? Her gaze did not waver. Because it's true. You don't have to believe me tonight. But you will remember. Maybe not now, but soon. Frustration stirred. He hated riddles, hated uncertainty. His life was measured in clarity, in data, in certainty. And yet he lingered. Something about her voice, the way it carried both fragility and stubbornness, anchored him where he stood. The boy broke the silence. Grandma, can we go see the lights? Yes, sweetheart, Eleanor whispered, patting his hand. She turned back to Adrian, her eyes softer now, glistening. Merry Christmas, son. The words struck harder than he expected. Son, he hadn't heard it in years, not spoken with such quiet affection. He opened his mouth, half to correct her, half to demand more, but she was already turning, her cane tapping against the stones, the boy guiding her gently toward the glowing archway of lights. Adrian stood rooted. Around him the market roared back into sound, the juggler bowing, shoppers laughing, music swelling. Life went on, as if nothing had happened. But inside, something shifted. A door cracked open in a house he thought long demolished. He raised his phone intending to call his driver, to flee the cold, the confusion. But the screen blurred for a moment, his reflection staring back. Behind the expensive coat, behind the polished face, he saw what the child had said, a man who looked sad even when he laughed. And against his will he wondered, what if she was right? The penthouse windows stretched from floor to ceiling, glass walls overlooking the city like silent sentinels. Below, the Christmas market glimmered faintly, a ribbon of gold wrapped around the plaza. From here, the noise was muted, the laughter muffled, as if trapped under glass. Adrian loosened his tie, tossing it onto a chair. His coat followed. He poured himself a scotch, the amber liquid catching the city's reflection. He wanted the drink to steady him, to burn away the lingering chill of the market. Instead, the silence of the room pressed against him. He set the glass down untouched. In the reflection, he saw himself framed against the city lights, polished, powerful, untouchable. Yet her voice threaded through the silence. Your laugh hasn't changed. He hadn't heard that laugh himself in years. Not that kind. How could she? He paced. The hardwood creaked under his steps. He prided himself on logic, on evidence. The woman was mistaken. She had to be. There was no possible way she knew him. His childhood had been a fog of foster homes, brief faces that blurred into one another. No constants. No one who could have remembered him from 1 year old. And yet, her eyes, the way she looked at him, not like an admirer or a stranger, but with something else. Recognition. loss, hope. He poured the scotch down the sink. The burn he craved wasn't in the liquor, it was already in his chest. On the counter sat his phone, vibrating with messages, board approvals, acquisition updates, holiday party reminders. He ignored them. Instead, he opened the photo folder he rarely touched. A handful of images, magazine covers, award galas, company milestones, and just one, old photo. A faded Polaroid. Him no more than 6, grinning crookedly with a missing tooth, clutching a plastic fire truck. Behind him, a woman's hands rested lightly on his shoulders. But her face cropped, cut away, lost. He never knew who she was. He zoomed in, uselessly. The picture was too worn, the edges frayed from years in his wallet before he set hidden it away in a drawer. He remembered once asking a social worker who the woman was. The answer had been vague, someone who cared for you when you were very little. Not anymore. That was all. A ghost of a story. The scotch might have dulled it, but the child Sepp's words from the market returned, clear as glass. You look sad when you laugh. He rubbed his temples, restless. He was a man who could buy anything, who could bend empires with a signature. Yet tonight, he felt powerless, haunted by a stranger's whisper and a boy's honesty. At midnight, he found himself standing again at the window. Below, the market was closing, stalls shuttering, lights dimming. He scanned the square, as though expecting to see her still there. Eleanor, cane tapping, scarf trailing. Of course she was gone. The city had swallowed her back into its endless sprawl. But he couldn't shake it. Against all reason, against the hardened walls he'd built, a thought rooted itself. What if she knew something he didn't? He closed the curtains sharply, shutting out the view. Darkness wrapped the room, but the echoes remained. He could almost hear it. The laugh he hadn't meant to give, the laugh she claimed belonged to a 1-year-old boy she remembered. Adrian lay awake long after the city slept, the photo tucked under his pillow, the woman's voice stitched into his thoughts. And somewhere deep inside, beneath layers of wealth and armor, a part of him, small, fragile, forgotten, stirred. The following morning, Adrian arrived at Nova's tower before dawn. The lobby glittered with holiday garlands, and a towering crystal tree, but none of it softened the building's steel edges. His staff greeted him with tight smiles, clutching coffee cups, eyes already on screens. He walked past them without slowing, his mind replaying fragments from the night before. The laugh, the woman's eyes. The boy's words. He tried to bury it beneath meetings, numbers, the sterile certainty of quarterly charts. But by mid-morning, his phone vibrated with news that carved through his focus. A leaked report claimed Novus had cut safety corners on a flagship project. Stock prices trembled. The media smelled blood. His COO barged into the conference room, face pale. Adrian, we need a statement, now. Adrian adjusted his cufflinks, voice cold, precise. Draft 1. We deny until we control the narrative. The COO hesitated. But if evidence surfaces, then we bury it until we can spin it. Adrian snapped. The room fell silent. He could feel their judgment, but fear held them mute. Power always did. Yet as he spoke, he heard another voice inside, quieter but relentless. You look sad when you laugh. He pushed the thought away, leaning into his mask of command, but by evening, when the last meeting bled into night, he found himself unable to drive home. Instead, without planning it, his car turned back toward the Christmas market. The stalls glowed again, music carrying on the crisp air, the smell of cinnamon and pine wrapped the square. Adrian walked slowly, coat collar up, scanning. He told himself he was only curious, only restless. But beneath the denial, he knew he was looking for her. And then he saw her. Eleanor sat at the same bench, cane resting beside her, scarf pulled tight. The boy was gone. She watched the carolers with a faint smile, humming along. Adrian's steps slowed. His chest tightened with something like dread and relief braided together. He almost turned back, but she looked up, and their eyes locked. She smiled, small and knowing. I thought you might return. He swallowed. I didn't plan to. Some things don't need planning, she said. He sat stiffly at the edge of the bench, leaving space between them. You said last night you remembered me, from when I was 1. That was impossible. Her gaze softened. not impossible, just difficult. Explain, he demanded. She hesitated, hands folding over the cane. Some truths need time, Adrian. If I told you everything at once, you stepped walk away and never return. He stiffened at his name on her tongue. He hadn't told her. How do you know my name? I read, she said simply. Magazines, newspapers. Your face is everywhere, but recognition does this to come from print. It comes from memory, from the way your laugh shook the air. He stared at her, torn between suspicion and an ache he couldn't name. Why should I believe you? You shouldn't, she said quietly. Not yet. Belief is earned. Silence stretched. The carolers shifted into another hymn. Adrian felt his phone buzz in his pocket, likely his PR team in flames. For once, he didn't reach for it. Eleanor studied him carefully. You built a world of walls. Heaven set you. Stone upon stone, but walls don't keep out echoes. Her words sank too deeply. He masked it with scorn. You speak in riddles. And you live in cages, she replied softly. Different shapes, same weight. He turned away, jaw clenched. He hated how she unsettled him, how she named things no one dared. She placed a small object on the bench between them. A folded paper, edges yellowed. Take it, she whispered. He hesitated, then picked it up. It was an old photograph, creased, faded, a baby, wrapped in a knitted blanket, smiling wide. Behind him, blurred, a young woman's face. He couldn't see her clearly, but something in the angle of the jaw, the curve of the smile, pressed into him like a half-remembered dream. Where did you get this? He asked sharply. Her eyes glistened. I was there. Adrian's breath caught. His phone buzzed again, urgent. But in that moment, he couldn't hear the world outside, only her voice, and the weight of a photograph that trembled in his hands. The photograph trembled in Adrian's hand as though it carried a pulse. He kept staring at the baby round cheeks, a wide, toothless grin, searching for proof, for denial, for anything that could anchor him. The knitted blanket looked handmade, stitches uneven but tender. Whoever had wrapped that child had done it with care. Adrian cleared his throat, voice edged with suspicion. You expect me to believe this is me? Eleanor Sett's lips curved faintly, but her eyes shimmered. I don't expect. I know. His grip tightened on the photo. Anyone could say that. Anyone could show me some faded baby picture and claim it's mine. What are you trying to get from me? Money? Influence? Her laugh was soft, almost broken. You think everything comes with a price tag? Don't you? No, Adrian. I don't want your money. I've lived with little all my life. What I want, what I waited for. She trailed off, breath catching. I wanted to hear that laugh again before I die. The words cut sharper than he expected. Death had no place in his vocabulary, only deals, growth, forward momentum. Yet the quiet finality in her tone stilled him. His phone buzzed again. This time he pulled it out, if only to break the moment. The screen flashed headlines. Novus under fire. Allegations of safety cover-up. Another buzz. An email from his PR head. Subject line screaming crisis plan urgent. He shoved the phone back into his pocket, jaw tight. Eleanor noticed. The world pulls at you from every side, she murmured. But when the noise stops, who's left? He snapped. Enough of this. If you know something about me, say it. Stop talking in riddles. Her cane tapped softly against the stones as she straightened. Truth isn't a riddle. It a wound. You don't tear it open in the cold. You let it breathe slowly. Slow doesn't work for me. She studied him with steady sorrow. I can see that. Silence pressed between them again. The market buzzed around them, children tugging parents toward candy stalls, a fiddler scraping out carols, snowflakes softening the air, and yet their world felt apart, stitched only by the fragile photo in his hands. Eleanor Stitt's voice grew gentler. Do you remember anything? Even a sound, a face, a place? Adrian shook his head sharply. No, my childhood is patchwork. Foster homes, caseworkers. Faces I don't recall. If you think you're part of that, prove it. Her eyes lowered. Some things can be proven like stock reports. They live in memory, in bone. That not enough. She sighed, her shoulders slumping beneath the scarf. I thought maybe the laugh would be enough to start. Anger prickled beneath his skin, fueled by helplessness. Start what? She turned to him, gaze unwavering. To remind you that you were loved once, that before the world hardened you, you were held. Adrian. I know because I held you. The words froze him. His throat tightened, heat rising behind his eyes. He hated it. This loss of control, this trembling he couldn't suppress. He stood abruptly, the photograph nearly crumpling in his fist. I don't know what game you're playing, but I don't have time for this. My company is on fire, and you, he broke off, unable to finish. Eleanor didn't flinch, her voice was steady, quiet. Even empires burn, son. What matters is what's surviving the ashes. The word son landed again, heavy, dangerous. He turned, ready to leave, but something in her posture stopped him, the frailty, the stubborn dignity, the quiet hope that trembled but did not fall. He lowered his eyes to the photograph one last time. The baby's grin mocked his steel exterior, a reminder of innocence he no longer believed in. Without a word, he slipped the photo into his coat pocket. Eleanor exhaled, almost a prayer. Then Adrian walked away, each step sharp against the cobblestones. The market lights blurred in his vision, the air colder than before. He didn't look back. But the photo pressed against his chest like a brand, refusing to be forgotten. By morning the headlines were everywhere. Mercer Sepsis Empire under investigation. Nova's safety scandal could trigger criminal probe. News anchors replayed footage of injured workers, faceless voices accusing the company of choosing profit over protection. Adrian sat in his corner office, glass walls, framing a city that now seemed to whisper against him. His team crowded around the table, frantic, words like liability, federal review, and class action cut through the air like blades. Adrian, you need to make a statement, the COO urged. Not yet, Adrian snapped. His eyes were colder than the skyline. We wait until we see the full leak. His PR director shook her head. Silence is an answer in itself. Public trust is collapsing. Adrian pressed his palms into the table, leaning forward. Trust isn't that's given, it's sets bought back, and we sell by it. The room fell quiet. They knew the steel in his voice, the refusal to yield, but under the surface, Adrian felt something slipping. His empire, built brick by brick, deal by deal, was cracking, and worse, his own armor was splintering, haunted by a voice that whispered still, I held you. By evening he left the tower against his team Seps please. Cameras flashed outside, reporters shouting questions, microphones thrust forward. He pushed through, face stone, words clipped. No comment. His driver asked where to. Adrian hesitated, the answer slipped out before he could stop it. The market. The Christmas market glowed once again, a stubborn pocket of warmth in a city sharpening its knives. Adrian pulled his coat tighter as he walked through the crowd, and there she was. Eleanor, sitting on the same bench as though the world had not shifted overnight. She looked up at him, and in her gaze was no judgment, no surprise, only recognition. You came back. I shouldn't have, he muttered, sitting beside her anyway. Her eyes studied his face, tracing the lines carved by years of command. The world is heavy on you today. He let out a bitter laugh. The world is trying to crush me. And yet, you came here, she said gently. Not to the boardroom, not to the cameras, here. Adrian exhaled, frost curling in the air. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the photograph, holding it between them. If this is me, then who's Seps holding me? Who are you to me? Eleanor's hand trembled slightly as she touched the edge of the photo. Her voice was fragile, but steady. I was your mother's sister. For a year I cared for you, fed you, rocked you, sang you to sleep. I heard your laugh when you were one. Then life tore us apart. Systems, papers, doors slammed shut. I searched, but the world swallowed you faster than I could reach. Her confession hit like a stone thrown into still water. Waves of disbelief, anger, and something dangerous. Hope spread through him. You're telling me you're my aunt? She nodded slowly. By blood. But more than that, by bond. Adrian shook his head. Why come now, after 40 years? Because I found you. Because you laughed.
Because time is short for me.
Her hand gripped the cane tighter, and I couldn't set or leave this world without trying to give you back a piece of yourself. The tenderness in her words burned against the tension in his chest. He wanted to reject it, to call it fantasy. But the way she spoke, the photograph, the echo of her voice, all of it scraped against something raw inside him. He turned away, staring at the lights strung across the stalls. Even if you are who you say, it doesn't change anything. My life, my world is falling apart. I don't need ghosts from the past. Eleanor Sepp's voice softened. Maybe ghosts are exactly what we need. They remind us of who we were before we lost ourselves. Adrian clenched his fists, nails biting his palms. He hated the weakness she drew out, the ache she named without effort. But he hated even more the thought that she might vanish again if he pushed too hard. The market bells chimed the hour. Children ran past, laughing. Adrian closed his eyes, and for the briefest moment, he imagined that laugh, the 1-year-old's laugh, she claimed, never changed, echoing inside him. When he opened his eyes, Eleanor was still there, patient, present, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel entirely alone. Adrian's office felt smaller than ever, though it spanned half the top floor of Nova's tower. The city lights beyond the glass looked like 1,000 watchful eyes, each one demanding his fall. On the screen before him blazed the headline: "Insider confirms Mercer cover-up." The words punched harder than any market fluctuation. Someone inside had turned. His empire wasn't just under siege, it was bleeding from within. His COO shifted nervously across the table. The documents, they are authentic. Safety reports, suppressed for months. Whoever leaked them had access to the executive server. Adrian Sepp's jaw clenched. Find out who. The COO hesitated. If it goes deeper, find out who. The man left quickly, and Adrian collapsed into his chair, pressing his palms to his temples. His chest burned with fury, but beneath it lay something worse. Exhaustion. For decades he had fought, clawed, built higher walls to protect himself from betrayal. And now betrayal sat inside those walls, grinning. He reached for his phone, then stopped. The instinct to control, to spin, to bury, it had kept him alive. But tonight, it felt hollow. The photograph in his pocket felt heavier than the scandal threatening to drown him. Almost without deciding, he found himself again at the Christmas market. The snow was thicker tonight, muting the world in white silence. The stalls glowed defiant against the storm. And on her bench, Eleanor sat waiting, scarf dusted with flakes, cane resting beside her. She looked fragile against the night, yet steady, as if she belonged to it. Adrian approached, tension pulling each step taut. Why do you keep waiting here? Her smile was faint. Because I know you still come. He sank onto the bench, shoulders rigid. My company Sepp's unraveling. Someone close betrayed me. I can even trust the people I built this empire with. Eleanor Sepp's gaze softened. Trust built on fear isn't a Sepp's trust at all. It's Sepp's obedience. Her words scraped raw. He turned sharply toward her. And you? Why should I trust you? You appear out of nowhere, with a story that sounds like fantasy. You say you held me, that you your family. For all I know, you want something too. Pain flickered across her face, but she didn't turn away. I won't blame you for doubting. The world taught you to see motives in every shadow, but Adrian, sometimes shadows are just shadows, not knives. His breath came fast, uneven. I can afford to believe you. And yet you stir here, she whispered. The truth in that cut deeper than accusation. He had returned, night after night, pulled by something he refused to name. Eleanor reached into her bag, pulling out a small box, worn at the edges. She held it out with trembling hands. This isn't Sepp proof, it's Sepp's memory, if you want it. Suspicion warred with curiosity. Slowly he opened the box. Inside lay a tiny knitted sock, yellowed, frayed, small enough for an infant's foot. His throat tightened. I made it, Eleanor said softly. For you. Your mother laughed when she saw how crooked the stitches were. You wore it once before it slipped off. I kept it all these years. Adrian held the sock between his fingers. The yarn was delicate, fragile, yet real, too real to dismiss as fabrication. He wanted to reject it, to call it coincidence. But the tremor in his hands betrayed him. Eleanor Sepp's voice quivered. I don't Sept want your empire, your money, your power. I want you to know you weren't Sept's forgotten. Not once, not for 40 years. For a moment, the storm around them seemed to still. The lights of the market blurred in Adrian's vision. He clenched the sock in his palm, unable to speak. But then the weight of betrayal pressed back, harsh and unrelenting. He shoved the box closed, sliding it into his coat. His voice came out sharp, defensive. Even if this is real, it changes nothing. My world is burning. You can change that. Eleanor didn't flinch. Her hand brushed his sleeve, light as snow. Maybe not, but maybe I can remind you who you were, so you can decide who you will be when the ashes clear. Her touch lingered only a second, but it seared through him, more dangerous than any scandal. Adrian stood abruptly, unable to bear it. I can't. His voice cracked. He stopped, turned away, and vanished into the storm before she could answer. Behind him, Eleanor remained on the bench, watching him go, her breath visible in the cold night air. Her eyes shone not with defeat, but with patience, the kind forged only through decades of waiting. The boardroom smelled of fear, not cologne, not coffee. Fear. Men and women in tailored suits whispered across the polished oak table, as though speaking too loudly might crack what little remained of Novus Industries. Adrian sat at the head, shoulders rigid, face carved from stone. Documents lay scattered before him. Federal subpoenas, media clippings, frantic legal drafts. Every word screamed collapse. His CFO cleared his throat. Adrian, investors are pulling out. We stir hemorrhaging capital. Another voice added, the Justice Department confirmed a probe this morning. We might not survive this. Adrian Sep's eyes narrowed. We will. Sep survived worse. But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't true. This wasn't just market turbulence. This was the reckoning he'd always outrun. And this time betrayal had come from within. The COO shifted uneasily. Whoever leaked those reports knew exactly where to hit. It had to be someone close. The implication hung heavy. Adrian scanned their faces, colleagues, allies, people who owed him everything, yet one of them had driven the knife in. Find them, he said, voice like ice. But deep down he wondered, was this the price of walls too high? Build them long enough, and even those inside start to suffocate. The meeting dissolved into frantic chatter. Adrian left without a word, the socks box heavy in his coat pocket. The penthouse was dark when he entered that night. He didn't turn on the lights, he wanted the shadows. He poured another drink, but the scotch burned bitter. His empire was crumbling, his board circling like vultures, and the only person who looked at him without fear was a woman who claimed to be his aunt. He pulled out the box, opening it with trembling fingers. The tiny knitted sock lay there, crooked and fragile. He pressed it between his palms, eyes closing. For a moment, just a moment, he felt warmth. The warmth of being held. But then reality roared back, subpoenas, headlines, betrayal. He slammed the box shut, cursing under his breath. The silence was unbearable. He grabbed his coat and stormed back into the night. The market was quieter now, the holiday rush thinning. Snow fell heavier, swallowing footsteps. Adrian found the bench empty at first. His chest tightened unexpectedly. What if she was gone? Then he saw her, returning from a stall with the boy at her side. Her cane tapped rhythmically, her scarf trailing behind. She looked smaller tonight, the storm pressing her down, but her smile still rose when she saw him. You came back, she said simply. He sat heavily beside her, not trusting himself to answer. The boy looked up at him. You look even sadder tonight, he said, with innocent bluntness. Adrian let out a sharp exhale that almost became a laugh. You don't hold back, do you? The boy shrugged. Grandma says truth is kinder than lies. Eleanor smoothed the boy's hair. Run along and look at the lights, sweetheart. Stay where I can see you. The child skipped off, leaving them in a pocket of quiet. Adrian rubbed his face with his hands. Everything I built is collapsing. Betrayal, lawsuits, vultures. I don't know who to trust anymore. Eleanor Sep's eyes were steady. Then trust this, you are not alone, even if you believed it your whole life. He shook his head. Alone is the only way I survived. Her voice softened. Survival is that the same as living? Her words cracked something his scepter kept sealed. He clenched his fists, fighting the surge of grief that threatened to rise. Why now? Why after 40 years? Where were you when I needed you then? The pain in her face deepened, but she didn't turn away. I tried, I searched, but the system scattered you and I had no power, no voice. I lost you, Adrian. I lost you when you were too young to even know you were mine to lose. Do you think I forgive myself for that? I don't. Every day, I've carried that weight. His chest heaved, torn between rage and sorrow. For the first time he saw her not as a stranger or a riddle, but as someone broken too. The storm thickened around them, snow swirling in the lamplight. The world seemed smaller, just a bench, just them, just the truth hanging in the frozen air. Adrian Sepp's voice dropped, rough. I don't know if I can believe you. Eleanor Sepp's eyes glistened. Then don't Sepps, just sit here. Sometimes that Sepps enough. He turned toward her slowly. For once, he didn't have an answer. He only had the sound of snow, the faint laughter of children, and the tiny sock pressing against his heart. The subpoena arrived at dawn. Federal marshals delivered it in person, their knock rattling against Adrian's penthouse door like a final verdict. He signed without expression, though his hands shook. When they left, silence spread like ash. By midday, news channels ran live footage of Novus executives fleeing the tower. The stock plummeted. Lawsuits multiplied. Adrian's name, once synonymous with innovation, now sat beside words like corruption and criminal negligence. He shut himself inside his office, blinds drawn. Calls poured in from lawyers, investors, desperate board members. He answered none. The empire he had bled for was crumbling faster than he could command. And in his coat pocket, the tiny sock weighed heavier than any subpoena. That evening, he returned to the market one last time, storm raging inside him. Eleanor sat in her place, as though the world hadn't changed. The boy was absent tonight. She sat alone, her cane upright like a sentinel. When she saw him, she smiled faintly. Adrian. He didn't sit. He stood before her, anger boiling through his voice. Do you know what's happening to me? My company, my name, everything I built is being destroyed. And you, he pointed sharply, his hand trembling. You appear out of nowhere, spinning stories of family and memory. Do you know what that does to a man already drowning? Her eyes didn't flinch. I know what drowning feels like. He barked a bitter laugh. Don't set you dare compare your life to mine. You don't set you know what it sets like to carry the weight of thousands, to be hunted by wolves waiting for you to bleed. Her voice was quiet but firm. And you don't stat know what it seps like to lose a child you loved. To wake every day, wondering if he is cold, hungry, forgotten. You don't stat know the weight of silence stretched across decades. The words struck like ice water, but he fought them, clinging to anger. If you really cared, if you were truly who you say, why didn't set you find me? Why didn't set you save me from those homes, those years alone? Her eyes glistened. Because I failed. Because I was powerless. And I have carried that failure every day since. He staggered back, breath ragged. He wanted to reject her, to cast her out of his storm. Instead, the fury collapsed into something worse. Grief. You can just walk in now and fix this, he whispered, voice cracking. You can change the years I lost. You can erase the loneliness. You can erase me. Her cane tapped as she stood slowly, her frail frame trembling. She placed a hand lightly on his chest. Not forceful, just steady. I don't want to erase you, Adrian. I only want to remind you that beneath the man the world calls ruthless, there was once a boy who laughed. That boy is still here. It is as his shid for boy bud. He tore away, pain raw in his throat. No, he Sepp's gone. He had to die for me to survive. The storm swallowed his words. Snow lashed against them, wind clawing. Eleanor's scarf whipped, her breath visible in the cold. She looked at him with sorrow deeper than words. Then I will grieve him too. Her voice broke on the last word, and that sound, frail, cracking, stabbed through Adrian's armor sharper than anger ever could. He turned, unable to bear it. Don says wait for me again, he muttered. His voice was low, final. This whatever this is, it sets over. And then he walked away. Eleanor didn't follow. She stood in the storm, her figure blurred by snow, her cane braced against the stone. Adrian didn't look back. He couldn't. But as he vanished into the night, the sock in his pocket pressed harder against his heart, and the memory of her broken whisper followed him into the dark. Adrian Sepp's penthouse was silent. The city roared below, but up here, the noise felt far away, like a world he no longer belonged to. Boxes littered the floor, legal files, shredded contracts, reminders of a life collapsing under its own weight. He sat in the dark, the tiny knitted sock on the table before him. His hand hovered above it but didn't touch. The television flickered in the corner, muted, anchors dissecting his downfall, analysts charting Novus's death spiral. His name once gilded, now corroded. For hours, he stayed like that, not working, not fighting, just existing, alone. But alone had never felt heavier. 3 nights passed before he returned to the market. He told himself it was to walk, to clear his head, to disappear into the crowd. But as he passed the glowing stalls, his eyes searched without permission, and then he saw her. Eleanor sat on the bench, shoulders hunched beneath her scarf, cane resting at her side. The boy leaned against her, clutching a paper bag of roasted chestnuts, his breath puffing white in the air. When her eyes found him, she didn't smile at first. She simply watched, waiting. Adrian hesitated, the memory of his own harsh words burned still. "Don't wait for me again," and yet here she was. He approached slowly. The boy spotted him first, eyes wide. "You came back," he said, grinning. Adrian swallowed. His voice was rough. "I wasn't set sure I would." Eleanor Sepp's gaze softened, though her face showed lines of hurt. "And yet you did." He sat beside them, silence pressing close. The boy offered him a chestnut. "They're better hot," he said. Adrian took one, awkwardly, almost reverently. The warmth seeped through the shell, into his frozen fingers. He cracked it open, the simple act grounding him more than any boardroom had in years. Finally, he turned to Eleanor. "I was cruel." Her eyes glistened. "You were hurting. I blamed you for years you couldn't change." She reached for his hand, resting hers gently atop it. "You blamed me because I was here, and because the ones who should have been weren't Sepped." The boy leaned closer, studying him with disarming honesty. "Are you really Grandma Sepp's family?" Adrian hesitated, throat tight. His gaze flicked to Eleanor, then back to the boy. "I think so." The boy grinned. "Then you stir mine too." The words pierced Adrian's chest, simple and unguarded. No contracts, no conditions, just belonging freely given. He lowered his head, a tremor shaking him. For so long he had been defined by walls and armor. Now beside this frail woman and this child, he felt those walls cracking, not from betrayal but from something terrifying and tender. Eleanor squeezed his hand. "It's not too late, Adrian. Empires fall. Families can be rebuilt." He looked at her, searching her eyes. "How, after everything I Sepp done, after everything I Sepp become?" Her smile was small, steady. "By choice. Love isn't set earned by power, it's settem's chosen, and I settem choosing you, even now." The boy tugged at Adrian Sepp's sleeve. "Laugh again." Adrian blinked. "What?" "Laugh," the boy said firmly. "The way you did with the juggler. Grandma says it sets the same laugh you had when you were a baby." Adrian stared at him, then at Eleanor. She nodded softly. For a moment, he resisted. The world had taught him that laughter was weakness, that vulnerability was danger, but here, in the storm of collapse, with nothing left to lose, he let the sound rise. It started small, awkward, then grew, unguarded, boyish, ringing into the cold night. His laugh spilled across the market, startling even himself. Eleanor's hand trembled over her mouth, tears brimming. The boy beamed. And for the first time in 40 years, Adrian Mercer laughed not as a CEO, not as an empire builder, not as a man alone, but as the boy who had once been held, once been loved, once been lost, and now perhaps was found. Later, as they walked together beneath the arch of glowing lights, Adrian slipped the tiny sock into Eleanor's hand. "Keep it," he said quietly. "It belongs with you." She shook her head, closing his fingers back around it. "No, Adrian, it belongs with us." Snow fell soft, blanketing the world in silence. For the first time he didn't feel buried by it. he felt held. And as the market lights shimmered above, Adrian knew love and belonging had appeared where he least expected them, not in the empire he built, but in the family he almost lost forever.